Welcome to the channel. Don't forget to put your memes and fake stories in entitled parents memes, thanks. M is mad I won't add her to my flight benefits. The title says it all, but I shouldn't have told her about it in the first place. I'm 28 and for more than half my life she gave up being a parent to me, my brother, and sisters. She didn't teach us how to drive, didn't go to any extracurricular activities or taught us girls about puberty and what to expect with our bodies. We literally had to learn these things from school or friends. She was always mean and angry. We couldn't ask to go anywhere and didn't have a good upbringing. I am one of 6 kids. My twin and I are basically the only two that have done something with our lives. I currently work at an airline company and had to move up north. My mum was already living here, so it was a no-brainer to move in with her. She lied about her living situation and I was forced to look for other accommodations. But now she's approved through Section 8 for a 2-bedroom apartment. The condition is she has to have a live-in aid to get the 2BR, so I accepted to live her. Otherwise, they would only put her in 1BR apartment. Now on to the situation. The airline I work for has strict rules when it comes to flight benefits. You are responsible for anybody who I put on my flight list. The least that can happen is I lose this privilege, and the worst that can happen is I get fired. Now I know my mum. She is a narcissist. She is manipulative to get what she wants. She gets an attitude when she doesn't get her way. Right now she's trying to manipulate me by bringing up what she did for us as kids, which she was obligated to do since we were kids. We didn't birth ourselves. Now she's trying to throw in my face that she's letting me stay with her. It's all about her. She doesn't even care that I can lose my job if she goes off at the airport. She thinks I'm just being mean. Truthfully, I want to add her, but the slight possibility of something going with the flight pisses her off and I'm responsible for scares me. I'll rather not add and won't. This is my livelihood. I just started this week and haven't used my own benefits. This isn't about her, but she think it is. I'll be moving out soon because she has always been like this. You can't ask for nothing without returning the favor, but this is a big request. This only the tip of the iceberg. Mother-in-law used my wife's younger siblings to extort her for years. So my 28M mother-in-law, 46F, has 7 children. My wife, 27F, is the second oldest, and along with her older brother, 28M, are children from a previous relationship. Their stepdad is, to put it in delicate terms, a very shitty human being. Nevertheless, he's the father of their 5 younger half-siblings, and a decently wealthy landowner in their small town on the Mexican side of the US-Mexican border. So there's nothing they can really do about him. And #X200B. Now, I could write a whole essay on why this man is a shitty person, but I'll stick to the main one. This terrible, no good, poor excuse for a stepfather would constantly harass and molest my wife ever since they met when she was 4 or 5. Eventually, he took it way too far. I'm not even gonna use the R word here. When she was 10 or 11, and when her mum found out 5 to 6 years later, the lady's bright idea was to simply send her daughter away to live with her grandma in the US. Note: my wife and her brother are Mexican, but were born here in the US. And #X200B. It was while she was living with said grandma that my wife eventually met me at our high school prom. And after about a year, we became a couple. Unfortunately, the grandma is a special kind of social conservative, the hypocritical, manipulative, and controlling kind, but not in a political way. Once the grandma found out, she instantly demanded that my then GF break up with me, saying all kinds of lies about me. Like how I was gonna dump her as soon as I've used her, or that I was only with her so she could pay for my college tuition. Instead of giving in to her grandma's demands, she held her ground and told her, "No, So the grandma kicked her out. And she moved in with my family. And #X200B. While she's been living with me, my mother-in-law continued to have contact with her and occasionally ask my wife for money. Now, I should point out that it was often my wife's own initiative to send her mum money to help out her mum and siblings out with basic necessities such as food, clothing, and household supplies. The stepdad is notoriously cheap. All the while, this undeserving man would hold his children as emotional hostages through my mother-in-law to extort emotional concessions out of my wife, such as getting her to tell him happy birthday, to act more as a daughter to him, or to apologize for hurting his feelings on social media. This type of bullshit would play out for a few years on end until eventually my mother-in-law finally found the gall to move out of his house when the stepdad tried replacing her with a younger woman. And #X200B. During this period, my wife would send even more money to her mum so she could afford rent and other living expenses, until she could get a job and get on her feet. Unfortunately, this period of independence was rather short, as she returned back into the stepdad's arms for the children's sake within 2 months' time. Additionally, this woman had decided that the best time to tell her beloved daughter that she cares so much about that she was moving back in with that heinous excuse for a human being on her birthday of all days. Things got even worse when she announced that they got married shortly afterward. Naturally, they stopped talking for a while. And #X200B. After making up some time later, my mother-in-law began pushing my wife and brother-in-law to earnestly begin the process of obtaining green cards for herself and their siblings. All three of us largely suspected that the real reason she wanted them was so the stepdad could also get papers and re-enter the US. But we continued with the process anyway, because of the kids. After all, they have no part in whatever beef is going on between us adults, even if some of them are adults now. And #X200B. Context. The stepdad used to live here in our city of residence. It's where he met my mother-in-law after all, but was deported after serving time for a violent squabble involving a shotgun and the grandma's husband, my mother-in-law's stepdad. My mother-in-law was also in a case involving Child Protective Services because of the terrible and unsanitary living conditions my wife and brother-in-law endured while they all lived under their grandma's household. Instead of risking the loss of her children, my mother-in-law fled with her then BF, now my wife's stepdad, across the border, and it's where they've been ever since. They both want to return to the States and the youngest 3 siblings were born in Mexico. And #X200B. In the 2 years since they've started the paperwork, they were somewhat successful in getting their mum's charges dropped by use of some sort of plea deal, since the case happened so long ago. However, instead of being grateful for all the hard work and money her 2 children have put into this, my mother-in-law became increasingly impatient with how long the process was taking, like she was owed all of their efforts by the very fact she gave birth to them and raised them. Her impatience continued to escalate, even as my brother-in-law faced increasing difficulty in affording the legal fees. Eventually, a simple clarification question on this one financial matter led my mother-in-law to go into a full-on woe is me mania over how ungrateful her kids have been. That my brother-in-law was starting to act like his stepdad. That he's being cheap. That he's hypocritical. And other bizarre lies and accusations. And #X200B. Still, even with that outburst, they continued chugging along with the process all for the sake of their siblings. It wasn't until my brother-in-law fell on even harder times, when his fiancée broke off their engagement, and his baby mama from a previous relationship began demanding greater child support, did the entire process stop. My mother-in-law continued demanding this one letter from our local PD to continue the process on her own. But my wife and I simply had no inclination to oblige her anymore. And #X200B. Soon, my mother-in-law became desperate enough to reach out to her estranged cousin to obtain the all-important letter from us. Now, this was a complete revelation to the both of us. We had absolutely no idea that my wife had any other family members living in our city. Up to that point, the only blood family my wife had any sort of contact with was her mum, her venomous grandma, and her also venomous aunt of the same age. My mother-in-law's cousin was nothing like them. She seemed more normal and stable. You know. Eventually, she invited us over to her home where the larger extended family, my wife's grandma's brother and sister, and some of their children, to welcome us into the family. It was absolutely amazing to see them be so eager to have her rejoin their family, trading stories and jokes that she hadn't heard ever since she first left the United States. I am quite hopeful that she can finally have the family she's always wanted that's actually related to her, and #X200B. Anyway, my mother-in-law's cousin suggested we hand over the letter to her on the condition that my mother-in-law does not ask anything of us again. So far, my mother-in-law hasn't contacted us ever since. Not even for my wife's latest B-day. Oh well, the cousin and fam had been encouraging my wife to get in contact with her real dad, who also happens to live in our city with another family of his own, to get a hold of the real story behind what happened between him and my mother-in-law's breakup. They believe that there's likely more to the story than what my wife had been told about her dad. And given the enormous amount of lies and deceit that often spews out of my wife's grandma, I am completely unsurprised that that would be the case. However, my wife is in absolutely no hurry to get in contact with her dad. But she has reached out, just waiting on a reply. After all, the man had never reached out to her and now he has another family with a different woman. Potential fracture in foot. Hello. 15F. Do marching band 3 times a week for 3 hours. In summer, we had band camp every day for 9 hours. I'm not sure if that's what did it or what, but after walking for a few weeks, I can no longer bend my foot past a certain point. It isn't bruised or swelling, but the pain is really bad and hurts when I put pressure on it or touch it. It only hurts sometimes, which doesn't make much sense. Somehow, it hurts more when I'm in bed or icing it. It's just gotten worse over the weeks and I told my mum about and she won't take me to the doctor for it. It'll just keep getting worse and I can't do anything about it. I've looked up multiple things about fractures and everything point to a stress hairline fracture. I don't know what to do about it because at this point I can barely do everyday things. Also, I wasn't sure where exactly to put this post, so I figured this was my best bet. Edit. I bugged her enough and she's going to take me to urgent care to look at it. Update. They think it's a torn ligament and wrapped it. Told me if it's not better to come back in a week. They didn't want to do an X-ray because they've had too many people exposed to unnecessary radiation. How can I get my dad to remove the time limit on me and my siblings' Nintendo Switch? A few years ago my dad and mum gave me and older brother a Nintendo Switch for Easter. We really enjoyed playing it and have lots of fun with it. Later on in life my parents got a divorce. My mum moved out, and my stepmum and stepbrother moved in. My stepbrother plays on it a lot. A little too much. While me and my brother don't get to nearly as much. Just a few minutes ago me and my stepbrother were playing when a notification popped up saying we had 30 minutes left to play. Me and my brother were pissed, so we called my dad and confronted him. After a few minutes of talking we have managed to get him to give us full access for the rest of the day, but I'm still pissed that he would do that with our Switch. He already gives me restrictions on my phone and I've had enough. So how can I get my dad to remove the restrictions on my Switch? Entitled abusive brother-in-law wants to drop his daughter at my home whenever he feels like it. Husband blames me for not allowing it. I Shannon, 33F. Have been married to my husband Tony, 34M, for 13 years. We have a daughter Janelle, 12F. It has been a very rocky 13 years because of Tony. His brother Miles, 31M, and family. Let me give you a little backstory. In 2020, Miles is diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder and the family has done nothing but enable it. He started arguing with Janelle while she was talking to his mother, her grandmother. I came out of the room because I heard it in the hallway and he was literally facing down. 6 feet 2 inches man. A 10-year-old girl threatening to put his hands on her because she talked back to him. I stood between him and told him he's not going to put his hands on anyone. His mother tried to quiet him and get him out the house. While Tony is sitting outside on the porch listening to everything that's happening. I asked Tony why he didn't do anything and he said his mother had it under control. I was seething and couldn't believe it. A month later, Miles comes with his daughter Jessica, now 6F. I'm in the shower and I hear him arguing with my daughter saying, "I'ma put my hands on you. Your father and mother can't do anything about it." I immediately came out the shower but he was gone and Jessica was there. I told Janelle to put her clothes on, we're leaving the house. Called my husband and told him we're leaving and Jessica is in the house. Miles returns and sees us waiting outside for an Uber. He starts berating us to the top of his lungs, calling us all kinds of names. We quickly went into the Uber when it came. He came up to the Uber and punched the window on the side I was sitting, telling us to go. I called the police when I arrive at my parents' place. They take my statement, give me a report then leave. I heard he was harassing people in the streets after we left, berating them the same way. I told my husband that Miles need to be taken to the hospital or else he will end up in jail or worse. He told his parents and they did nothing. Instead had him where they were working, watching him. He saw my husband come by. Miles then slipped away from them and came to the house. After things escalated drastically, the police was called and he was taken to jail. It is now 2022. I have not seen any of them, Miles and family, since that incident. My husband's birth family has been trying to get us to be around them when we'd rather swallow hot coals. Mother's Day. He asked my husband if he can bring Jessica to see Janelle. Out of the blue. I almost choked because of the audacity and said no. Told my husband that no one has apologized or atoned for anything, including him. Jessica told me in 2020 that her father etc. told her not to trust me and I don't love her. It hurt her because she said she told them that I do love her. I've had her since she was a baby on and off. How could I not? I also told him that in the future, his mother can bring her by when we're ready. A week later, when I went to a store 2 blocks away, Janelle's grandfather brings Jessica and Miles over. Her grandpa usually knocks the door and she goes out to greet him. But this time Miles and Jessica was at the door. She had a panic attack while Miles apologized for his past behavior and tried to give her a hug. Janelle said she was sick and be backed up. Jessica however came in and spoke for a few minutes with her. My daughter called me immediately after in a panic telling me what happened. The way my heart dropped into my toes and rolled around. It took me less than 5 minutes to be back home. Once again I called my husband and told him what happened. Then had him put an extra bolt on the door. Today, my husband calls me and asks if Jessica can stay for a few hours. I said no. You have to give me a bigger heads up. She can come by next Saturday. About a half hour later, we, Janelle and I, hear a knock on the door. I check by the window and see Jessica and her father. Now I'm confused because I definitely said next Saturday. Plus I don't want Miles here for obvious reasons. They leave after a while. Then my husband comes home while I'm once again in the shower. I hear a little voice after I turned the water off and who's in the kitchen. Jessica. I told her, "Hi baby. You can come next Saturday. We're going to have a fun day." All while Tony was ushering her out the door. I asked Janelle how she got in here and she said Tony brought her inside. While my husband was leaving, I told him to make sure the doors are locked because I don't want anyone coming in here. He said nobody is trying to come in here and I mentioned his brother knocking at the door. Clearly he had no idea. Then said his brother was leaving Jessica with him. Impossible because he was at work. He's staring at me intensely and I asked if there was a problem. He starts shouting at me, saying I'm being stupid because I don't want Jessica to come over. That I'm holding on to the past. He's making it seem as if I just don't want her to come over. I want to keep her away from Janelle. I tell him to get out of my face and go. He continues to shout and then proceeds to bump his chest into mine. Still naked, fresh out the shower. I tell him to stop before I call my brother. He tells me to call him, knowing he will do absolutely nothing if my brother were to show up. And continues harassing me. I told him if he touches me I'm going to call the police. He said call them for what, then proceeds to poke me passive-aggressively, trying to egg me on into retaliating. I continue to tell him to leave. He has to go back to work. He finally leaves. My mother thinks I should drop it and let Jessica come over whenever. When I know they just want a free babysitter, plus I don't want to deal with these issues anymore. TLDR. Entitled husband and his family is mad at me for not allowing my abusive brother-in-law, who has schizoaffective disorder and threatened to hit my daughter more than once, and is being enabled by the family to drop off his daughter that I've had off on since she was a baby, but haven't seen in 2 years. My husband called me stupid today, screamed at me until he chest bumped me, saying I'm keeping her from our daughter while holding on to the past. Update. Janelle and I have taken some of our things and are currently staying with a friend. We live in NY. We left after he went to work today. I'm open to options and looking into the best next steps from here. My daughter is very intelligent. She knows that what his family doing is wrong and is very outspoken when it comes to them, which they don't like. Thank you so much for your responses. I'm overwhelmed in the best way. Thank you for validating that I wasn't overreacting, and actually abused on levels I didn't consider, especially from my husband. Karen at the classic car show, not for those with a weak stomach. I was reminded of this story as I plan to go to a classic car show in the morning. Context. I'm a classic car nut. I live in England and I own an old Cadillac. I don't really get a chance to go to car shows due to working nights. COVID made it difficult or just money for fuel. So when I get a chance I make a day of it. In 2013, I went to a local car show on the beachfront in the next town where I live. It's local, mainly American cars and rat rods. Around 30 or 40 cars. So a good-sized meet. I had only heard about that morning and went on my own. My nephews would usually come along. I found a spot and parked the caddy. Lovely sunny day. An ice cream stand. Fish and chip shop nearby. What more could you want? After an hour chatting to people and answering their questions. My caddy is a rare car in the UK. I went to see the other cars for myself. The cars were parked end to end with good space in between. So the line was around 1/3 of a mile along the promenade. Pristine cars. Quarter-mile specials to heavily chopped rats ranging from the 1930s to 1990s. Guess which idiot forgot to lock his car? I came back to a kid in the driver's seat, aged 4 or 5. Yanking at the steering wheel and pressing all the buttons with his mother taking pictures. First rule of a car show. Don't just get into other people's cars. Ask first. Interaction as follows. Me. What are you doing? Karen. My son wanted to sit in the car. Me. Who said he could? Karen. Me. This is my car. Why didn't you ask? Karen. It was unlocked and no one would let him sit in their cars. So this Karen went checking for unlocked or unattended cars? Perhaps. I was annoyed that her kid was using the inside of car as a jungle gym. Me. Get him out now. She didn't say another word. She got her son out and left. This kid was only wearing his underwear and licking something off his fingers. Great. He sat in my car with an ice cream and ate it like a hog. Or so I thought. When they started walking away, I saw why he wasn't allowed into other people's cars. He'd crapped himself. The back of this underwear was stained brown and hanging low. Not only was it running down his legs and up his back as well as licking it of his fingers. Not only was it on the seat, it was on the steering wheel, the door, dashboard, radio and on every damn switch. There was a shop nearby, so bought baby wipes and disinfectant spray. I didn't leave anything in the car, but the little bastard had pulled of the shifter knob. It was on the passenger seat. And stole one of the car cigarette lighter. I went looking for them but couldn't find them. It was busy. The smell stayed for weeks and had to replace the seats. I was planning to anyway, but this pushed the need forward. Luckily I found an old limo in a junkyard. My mum took control of my social media. This was years ago, but really was disgusting when I think about the stuff she would do. When I was 13 years old I was finally given permission to have Facebook, but it would be under my mom's email and she would have full access to my account. I didn't really mind. I was a minor and was just happy to have something. This was during the time where MySpace was still big and Facebook was coming up. At first my mum would make posts and comments under my friend's post acting like me. Nothing bad at first, just a few nice comments and cheesy remarks. Then I got my first boyfriend. My mum started to take away all my social media and phone for days on top of days. I would come to school with friends asking me why I said those hurtful things. Why did I post those hurtful stuff? Why was I texting mean things to them? I would tell them I was grounded, but they never believed me. When I got my phone back everything would be deleted except my social media post. I was see my mum making fun of my curvy friends for their size, racial slurs, and calling other minors whores. I would delete them but damage would be done. My boyfriend would ask why would I say some disgusting thing and finds out she would be texting my boyfriend and friends acting like me. I confronted her about it when I was 16 and she told me to mind my business. But this was my business. She was acting like me and saying these hurtful stuff. Flirting with my boyfriends. Starting fights. And just being disgusting. The worst one was when my best friend for years was attacked by mum. She cancelled plans to hang out to finish her app homework. She then changed her mind last minute and asked for us all to come hang out at her place. I asked my mum and for some reason she flipped out saying she was fake. She took my phone and grounded me. I woke up at 3 a.m. to her throwing my phone at me saying it was done. I didn't see what she said to her, but it must have been horrible for her to say all these horrible things about me. I was so hurt by the things she said I never talked to her again. We still haven't spoke to each other. It was been 8 years. College I changed all my passwords and emails. She called me up asking why I would do this and what I was hiding from her. That I was obviously planning on talking shit about her to everyone and to prove I wasn't to share my passwords. I would get emails for a password change from time to time and she would get in. I haven't talked to my mum for almost 2 years. But I will still get those password change emails. Knowing she is still trying to control me this way as well. Edit. Thank you for all the suggestions on how to take care of this issue. I had deleted a majority of my social media she had access to, like Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. I have made new ones she has no access to, but I noticed at one point she tried to log into my Instagram at one point thinking she had it figured out. Facebook is the only one she really wants access to, and switch my Facebook email over to a new email address and password. She is afraid I am ruining her image in the world on my Facebook. When actually I'm going to be doing it on here anonymously. So I will be posting more effed entitlement fits she had. Thank you for all the advice again. I have loved my mum through all the pain and bruising because she was the only parent and family I had left in the world. Venting on Reddit has been nice to see I was not crazy for all the pain I have suffered from her. That it was real and not something a normal child just works through. I will be updating in the future on my police report with her on my later post. If I finally decide to grow the balls to apologize on my mother's behalf to my old friends. And more. Thank you again. My nana at my mum's wedding. Okay, so I never ever thought I'd have a story worthy of the infamous Entitled Parents subreddit, but here we are. I, 13F, attended my mum's, 38F, and her, now, husband's, 40 meters, wedding. My nana, crazy old bitch age, was also attending. We are all in this mansion place. And she shows up, and she shows off her wedding dress. It is a white dress that goes to her ankles, decorated with a sparkled collar, and a white jacket. It is an actual joke. Paired with the white hat that has a bouquet of flowers on the rim. Before the wedding itself, the night before to be exact, my nana drank so much wine that she was too drunk to walk. She was still drunk when we woke up the next morning. She woke up and started an argument with a bridesmaid, yelling that last night she had cooked everyone dinner and hadn't got any credit. She didn't. The bridesmaid that she was yelling at actually made us food. She stormed into the room and my mum was getting ready in. And she was yelling and screaming at my poor mum, who was on the verge of tears. My nana then, still drunk, got in her car and drove to my uncle's house. She yelled at my uncle. And my uncle called my mum, who was fanning her eyes trying not to ruin her makeup as her mother screamed down the phone at her. Soon, my auntie's boyfriend was sent to go pick 'em both up. So he did. My nana had recovered, and had apologized for the outburst only to repeat it 10 minutes later. By screaming that everyone else had had professional hair and makeup artists do them up and she didn't. My mum yelled at her that it was because she was busy having a tantrum at my uncle's house. She then shut up, and all was fine. We went to the venue. My mum got married, etc. Then after that, I was sat on the steps in front of the venue. Just sat. I was already in a bad mood. Because the man my mum married is a creepy person towards me and my sister. Anyway, so my nana came over and was talking to me about how I could talk to her whenever. She turned it in on herself though, and began to list bad things that happened in her life. This is how she told me that my dog had died. She simply said, "Oh, and Willow's dead too." Single quote. I stared at her, and asked, "What?" and began to cry. That dog was my childhood. She was the best thing that had ever happened to any of us. I'm tearing up again writing this embarrassingly. So yeah, I began crying, and she walked away on her white dress. As my sister, aunties, uncles, mum, and basically everyone at the wedding yelled at her until she left. They didn't tell me because they knew how affected I'd be. I want to throttle that witch with the stupid ass feather in her hat. Single quote. M14. BMX Karen and her poor kid. So I'm a 14-year-old dude and I race BMX bikes. It's really fun, go look it up. So this story takes place about a week ago. So I was at my home track riding my bike and there's some kids right. So I don't see anyone on the first straight and I send it into the first concrete corner and then I see it, a kid about 7 just standing there right where I'm going. Boom, and I hit him hard and I thinking, oh my god, what the hell. So I check up on him. Me, "Hey little dude, you okay?" Quote. "Yeah, I'm fine, just a little scraped up." "Are you?" Kid, now known as Nice Kid. I look at myself and I am scraped up to all hell and bleeding and the pain finally kicks in so I fall to the ground. A few minutes go by and I'm propped up on the jump still in pain and I see Karen. Karen, hey, you hit my kid. Me, what? Quote. Karen, can you not understand me? You hit my kid. Yes, she said it slowed down. Me, hey, we can talk later, can you get me the first aid kit? No, you will apologize to my son now. Karen said. Me, I will. Just help me. Karen, no. Karen, you know what? I'm taking you bike as compensation. By the way, my bike is like $2,000 and I wear clips. So I'm clipped in chilling waiting for team captain. She grabs my bike and it twists my ankle. So I scream in pain. NK, Mum, stop, you're hurting him. Karen, I don't care, he hurt you so we deserve it. So I finally get my foot out and my TC finally gets there. TC, hey, what's going on? Karen, this kid stole my son's bike. TC, no, it's not, I know that because I drove him here when taking my bike back and comes to check up on me. Karen, I'm calling the cops for theft. TC, okay, do it. So she calls them and we wait and I get bandaged up. C1, hey, what's going on here? Karen, this kid crashed into my kid on purpose and stole his big and this man attacked me when I took it back. Me, no, that's not true, her kid was standing on the corner and I didn't see him and I wrecked into him and then she tried taking my bike. So they go off to take her statement and they come back to me. C2, is there any way to prove this bike is yours? Me, yeah, it's my background on my phone. So I have show them it and they handcuffed her for attempted theft and assault. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no because I didn't want that kind of life for the kid, so yeah, that's it. TLDR, crash into kid. Karen gets mad and tries to steal my bike and gets arrested. Edit, for the people that are going to ask, yes, she did get arrested, so she probably will have a record. Military dogs and Karen don't mix. I'm a 6 feet 5 inches Staff Sergeant K9 handler. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan and I transferred to Homeland Security as a K9 drug sniffer handler. I was doing my job and was on my to a different terminal and then enter snotty brat. I see him from the other side of the hallway that I was walking down. I see him run over and yell, "Puppy!" I put my hand out and say, "Please don't pet him. He's working," and his mum comes up from behind and says, "Why can't he pet your dog?" And I replied, "Ma'am, he is not a domestic dog, he is a drug sniffer, he cannot be pet due to the rules." And the snotty brat pipes up and says, "I wanna pet it," and Karen say, "You can, sweetheart," and he reaches out to pet him and I yell, "No," and grab the kid's wrist, not too hard but enough to keep him from petting the dog, and his mum yells, "Rape," and security comes running and the officer asks, "What's going on?" I explained that I told the mum and the child that they couldn't pet the K9 and both of them were taken by security, and was later told that they threatened to sue after they missed their flight. I feel like a dick for grabbing his wrist, but that's what our training teaches us to do. But feel free to tell me how you feel in he comments. Edit, thanks for support. Nosy Karen won't respect social distancing and asks a question she doesn't like the answer to. Hello, dear readers, and welcome back to yet another Entitled Parents story. And no, this is not about the mega Karen that birthed me. Although I still have many more of them to write in the future. This one happened a few days ago when I was out shopping. I should mention that I'm disabled and confined to a wheelchair from a spinal cord injury in 2007. Because of my disability and other health obstacles I face because of that, I'm shit scared of catching COVID, as there's a very high chance of me dying or becoming hospitalized if I caught it. I've already been in a coma once, so that's not something I want to do again. Due to my unwavering fear of COVID and generally not being a social person to begin with, I don't go out much, usually a few times a week to get what I need and come straight home. It's no longer a requirement in my country to wear a mask in public, although I still do all the necessary steps to prevent myself from catching it. Mask. social distancing, self-isolation. Not as miserable as that sounds. Being extra diligent with hand washing and only touching the things I have to. So when people get too close to me without wearing a mask, that tips my anxiety into overdrive. With that being said, on with the story. I was in the craft section at Kmart stocking up on what I needed when I noticed a woman and her kid. In the next aisle keep glancing at me. Neither were wearing a mask. Asterisk. For simplicity's sake, let's as call them Karen and kid. This wasn't an issue, as I'm used to people looking at my wheelchair. But then the kid, who was maybe like 8, walked up to me and began playing with some things near me. I'd gotten what I needed, so I ignored the kid and started rolling to the registers to complete my purchases. But this is where things get interesting. Kid, why are you in that? Quote. I'm used to kids being curious and I don't mind telling them why I'm in a chair if they ask. So I told him. Me. I fell off a roof. Kid. Why? Quote. Me. 'Cause I didn't eat my vegetables. Asterisk. The only thing I could think to answer with. Kid. But why? Quote. Me. Asterisk. Not wanting to be stuck in this boomerang with a kid that was way too close to me. Sorry buddy, but I have to go. And I attempted to leave. Kid. Asterisk. Not taking the hint. Wait. How fast does your chair go? Can I push the button? Asterisk. I have a horn on the controller of my power wheelchair. Me. No. Sorry. I gotta go. I'd been so distracted by this that I hadn't noticed his mother close beside him. The outside half of my right eye is blind, which was where she was. So I couldn't see her. Karen. Why won't you answer his questions? Quote. Me. I did, but I really have to go. Sorry. Karen. Asterisk. Seeming to get more and more indignant as she spoke. Oh come asterisk on. He's a kid. He's just curious. Why are you being so rude to my son? What would your mother think? Quote. What I did next wasn't planned, but damn was it satisfying to see her reaction. My mother abused me growing up. Wanted to switch me off when I was in a coma and tried to exploit money from me and my siblings. After the death of our dad. So I have a lot of trauma to bring on the waterworks if required. Me. My mother. Asterisk. I could feel the heat flushing to my face and the tears reached my eyes as I forced myself to cry. If you must know, my mum and dad died in a plane crash when I was 19. What else would you like to know? Asterisk. I said this while intentionally stuttering my words to give my performance an extra zing. Asterisk. My mother is unfortunately still alive. It was my dad and uncle that died. But I had that trauma to cling to at that moment. Karen. Asterisk. Instantly going white. Oh. I'm so sorry. And her kid scurried away. To give her credit, she stopped being a Karen for a second. They might not sound that entitled. And yeah, the kid wasn't asterisk that asterisk bad. But the mother, on the other hand, it wasn't exactly asterisk what asterisk she said, but asterisk how asterisk she said it. And being raised by my mother has given me the ability to spot one from a mile off. Thanks for reading. Less than 3. Mum tried to invite herself on my trip. Told me I'm not allowed to move away. I won a trip to NYC through my work for hitting some high metrics. And I called my mum to tell her. I was feeling proud of myself and thought she would be proud too. Here's a quick rundown of the conversation. Immediately asking if she could come with me and getting angry when I told her no because that it probably wouldn't be best for a woman in her 60s who is fresh off back surgery to go limping around NYC, demanding that I bring her a sandwich from Katz's. Sure mum, I'll buy a sandwich. Travel to the airport with the sandwich. Fly 2 hours home with the sandwich. And then drive an hour to your place to deliver the fucking sandwich to you. What is she thinking? Asking if I'd move to NYC if the raise was significant enough. Then getting angry when I said yes. You can't. It's too far. How do you expect me to drive there? I'm not expecting you to do shit. It's not about you. What the hell, lady? I can't even celebrate doing well at work without this woman draining the life out of me. And then she gets pissy when I don't want to spend time with her. God give me strength. My mother locked me out of the house after I had wisdom teeth surgery for some background. 21. F. Have never gotten along with my mum. 45. F. We have never had any kind of relationship even while living with her. So fast forward to 2020 global crisis blah blah. For private reasons I had to move back in with my mum at the age of 19. I knew it was going to be hard adjusting, but I made the best of it. Fast forward to the situation. I worked at Bed Bath Beyond for 6 months up until my birthday. I have several issues working for that job and company. I hate working there. Was glad to get a new job working at Red Lobster and finally got out of there. I quit but did not tell my mum because I already had another job, so I didn't feel like I needed to tell her, so I didn't. Eventually she found out from my godmum that I didn't work at the job anymore and that I didn't tell her about, so she changed the garage code, which is how I got in the house without needing a key. Because she would not give me a key for whatever reason. So now if no one was home I had no way to get in the house, so because of that when my wisdom tooth surgery that she knew about by the way came up, she left me outside for over 13 hours with my wounds in my mouth bleed profusely. Lower jaw was swollen and numb. Had cotton in my mouth for bleeding and could barely talk. Was very drowsy and out of it from drugs from the procedure. I couldn't eat or drink anything because I was in pain. I could pick up my pain meds for hours and accidentally left my ID at home in my other wallet. And she never batted an eye to check on me. Then I found myself after 13 hours of wandering outside. I found myself wandering into the Walmart bathroom crying in pain on the phone with my grandma, who lives across the country, mind you, to call my mum and yell at her to pick me up and take me home. And when we got home my mum said if I would have told her about me quitting Bed Bath & Beyond she would have never had to change the garage code and I wouldn't have been locked out the house. I just thought what an entitled bitch she is. But I want to know, was I wrong for not telling my mum about me quoting my job? Entitled Subway Mom. So this happened during my summer vacation. My sister and I spent our shared summer vacation in a city that's much larger than the sleepy little town we come from. Part of what we love about this city is the public transportation. Sounds silly, I know. But if you live in the kind of hovel where you're lucky if the one train every hour leaves on time, you learn to really appreciate not having to worry about getting your connection. It's the difference between my train is 5 minutes late, so I'll miss my connection. The next one goes an hour later. So fuck me, I guess. And oh no, we missed the subway. What are we going to do? Let's just take the next one in 4 minutes. So we're on vacation. In the subway. It's a weekday. Around 10-ish and not busy. When we got in, there was barely anyone there and we decided to take a 3-seat place. 2 on one side, then 1 on the other, facing each other. In hindsight, I know that the space where another seat could have been has been left open for wheelchairs and baby carriages and stuff. 1 station later, entitled mum comes in. She has a child in a carriage, about 2 years old, and walks past us to sit in the 4-seat place behind us. At no point does she talk to us or even make eye contact. If she'd said anything, we would have gotten up immediately. We only notice something is wrong when her kid starts making a fuss and she tries to soothe it. I didn't even really get what was going on until my sister told me to be quiet and listen. This lady is sitting behind us, speaking loud enough that she obviously wants us to hear, telling her kid, "It's okay. I'm so sorry. You have to sit here because those mean people took our place. They are so mean," just over and over again. What the hell?